is Bryce Nana Kwasi Amaning. After the break, you get to know who I'm speaking with today.
Ghana is engulfed in filth everywhere you look. People day in, day out are filling our gutters with filth and openly defecating in our gutters and on our seashores. 1 out of every 5 Ghanaians defecates in the open, and about 90% of all our excreta ends up in streams and rivers, the same place our drinking water comes from. These acts have contributed to making Ghana one of the unsanitary places in Africa, whilst contributing to the rise in diseases such as cholera and malaria. For instance, 3.5 million people contract malaria every year, with approximately 20,000 children dying from malaria every year, which is 25% of the deaths of children under the age of 5. A report released by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, indicates that Ghana loses in excess of over $290 million yearly to poor sanitation. According to the report, these monies are being spent on clearing huge refuse within cities and healthcare as a result of the country's sanitation problems. Every year, parts of the nation is flooded during the rainy season, leading to loss of lives and properties, an act which is primarily due to our gutters being choked with filth. For how long are we going to watch as our nation is engulfed in filth? For how long are we going to watch our loved ones die of preventable diseases like cholera and malaria? Whose responsibility is it to ensure that waste is properly managed in Ghana? Is the nation considering other alternative means of waste disposal, such as recycling, which can help protect our environment as well as serve as an avenue for money? What are we as citizens doing to ensure that our environment is clean and remains so? Are we not ashamed as a people that our lovely beaches that could have served as tourist attractions have turned into landfills and toilets? Ghana would only become the cleanest nation in Africa if only we, its citizens, are disciplined and come together to fight against this menace. Amaning Television is waging a war against filth. What about you? Stop the filth now.
Abarkazanta yanzu.
Fomo mujewu amnone no.
Jijogbedu dokoko yakacho. Moma yenyai efin aye yegu montene so sesia.
Anju, welcome back. I'm here with IMF resident representative, Ms. Natalia Koliadina. You're welcome.
Hello, nice to see you.
Thank you for your time in a way. It's beautiful office, I might say.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Now, the first question I've always wanted to ask is, give me a clear picture, or paint to me a clear picture of the work of the International Monetary Fund.
The International Monetary Fund is a global organization. It has 189 member countries, and the focus and the major task of the IMF is to support global financial and economic stability. How do we do that? First of all, we are doing it with our regular annual, for the most part, checkups. When we go to the country, we talk to the authorities, assess recent developments, prospects, and report to our executive board. Now, when the economic health deteriorates, then authorities, our member countries, come and request a program. And this is essentially the lending arm of our activities. Right. But our lending is limited to the situations when the economy is not doing well.
Okay.
Now, and the third important activity that we're engaged in is capacity development. We want our membership to conduct good economic policies, and therefore we provide training and we provide technical assistance in the areas of monetary policy, fiscal policy, public financial management, and many more areas.
Now, one will ask, the well-being of economy of a country could be relative. So if you say if a country's economy is not well, what exactly do you mean by that?
That's a very good question. What I mean by that is imbalances in the economy. When you don't feel well, you feel a headache or maybe a stomach ache, something. And that's exactly what the economic issues could be. For example, if your revenues are not sufficient to cover your expenditures, and I'm talking about government expenditures, then the government has to borrow. And as time goes by, if the government doesn't reduce this deficit between revenue and expenditure, borrowing increases, as well as the cost of borrowing. And it means that you're developing a fiscal imbalance. Your borrowing becomes more expensive, it's more difficult to come by, and then essentially the government finds itself in a very difficult position when it cannot finance its expenditures. It could also affect the exchange rate, and you have seen it back in 2013. Fiscal deficits, and it had implications for the foreign exchange, which was rapidly depreciating because you could not attract new foreign capital.
Now, if I may ask, has the IMF ever said no to a country that had come for money to put into his policy or anything? Has the IMF ever said, okay, no, looking at your proposal and all that, we cannot provide you this money? Has there ever been a circumstance like that?
You see, your question is about the circumstances or the conditions under which we provide our financing. Yes. And as I said, usually the governments come to us and request for our financing in bad times, in difficult times. So the IMF financing helps to prolong adjustment and make adjustment easier. At the same time, we have to make sure that our loans are repaid, and therefore we negotiate, we talk to the government about the reforms which would support economic development and which would support economic stability. And based on these agreed conditions, we will lend and we will have a program with the country.
So if any country does not fall under any of what you stated, then that means the country will not be given the lending they are looking for.
No, I don't remember any case when the government requested the IMF program and it did not get a program. The issue is about agreeing on the conditions, and these are specific economic reforms which need to be implemented to put the house back in order. It's like as if you are taking a medicine. Medications are not always pleasant, and medical procedures are also not pleasant, but some of them you have to essentially accept.
Yes. But another thing too I want to ask is, what exactly does the IMF look out for if a country is supposed to pay back or supposed to come back on its feet economically and be strong again for them not to go back to the IMF? What exactly does the IMF expect in return after lending monies to countries?
Well, basically we're looking at macroeconomic adjustment, and by that I'm talking about the exchange rate stability. For example, if in 2013-2014 Ghana experienced a significant exchange rate depreciation, the economic adjustment, including fiscal adjustment, when the government was able to curb its expenditure and reduce the deficit, the difference between revenue and expenditure, helped stabilize the exchange rate along with monetary policy. You probably remember that the Bank of Ghana significantly increased its policy rates. So, and these are the short-term macroeconomic measures.
Right.
So essentially, to address the issue, you need to give a quick medication which would work. At the same time, if the policies are not improved, if institutions have not been strengthened, this disease could recur. So what we are looking toward is also structural reforms, and particularly institution building. I have already mentioned our capacity development work, and that's where it comes forward, because we would like governments to conduct good economic policies on their own without going and requesting the IMF program.
We shall be coming to talking about some policies I think the Ghanaian government is doing well with. That was going to be like later on in our discussion. But let me ask you, does IMF make use of rating agencies like Fitch and Moody?
No, we are not using Fitch and Moody. Well, I mean, obviously, we're reading their reports, but we are making our own assessment of the economy. And let me be very clear that we are very focused in terms of what we're looking at. Essentially, we're looking at macroeconomic indicators.
Right.
So I mentioned the fiscal area, government revenue and expenditure, how they balance, what is the financing requirement, how much the government needs to borrow, what's the debt of the country, and whether it is a risk. At the same time, we're looking at monetary policy. Monetary policy is very important because you go to the stores, buy your groceries on a daily or weekly basis, and you don't really like when prices go up, right? So monetary policy is essential to keep prices stable, and price stability is essential not only for you and me, the consumers, it's also essential for the producers. Again, if prices rise, then it could have implications on the exchange rate. And I know that in Ghana you pay a lot of attention at the exchange rate stability. And it is important for the businesses to have the exchange rate stable. So this is essentially the area that we're focusing on. At the same time, we want to lay the foundation which would help the governments to continue with good economic policies even after they graduate from our programs. And that's where structural reforms, like public financial management.
So do you believe that the increase in monetary policy rate here in Ghana is another step for Ghana to graduate from the IMF program? Because you seem to be mentioning that a lot in your statement.
No. The answer is no. I mean, if we're talking about now, I have been mentioning increases in the policy rate almost 3 years ago, when exchange rate was sliding and when inflation was high and rising. Now the situation has changed dramatically. Inflation has been declining, and you've seen that the latest reading of inflation is under 10%. The Bank of Ghana has been maintaining tight monetary policy, and what I mean by that, it has been cutting policy rates, but at a measured pace to ensure that inflation goes further down. And we expect that by the end of the year, inflation would go somewhere to 8%, which would be within the inflation band between 8 and 10%. This is essentially the medium-term inflation target that the Bank of Ghana has right now. So I am not talking about increasing monetary policy rate. We fully support monetary policy exercised by the Bank of Ghana right now, and it's measured and gradual reduction in policy rate.
So in all, what exactly do you make of the monetary policy rate? The amount which is being required for banks to pay?
Well, monetary policy rate is not a lending rate, let's face it. So monetary policy rate is the rate that actually translates into your inflation or price increases.
But from the camp of the IMF, what do you make of it, seeing how it's affecting local banks whose liquidity is being affected and banks are being taken over and all that? From the camp or from where the IMF sits, how are you viewing this particular sector when it comes to banking in Ghana at the moment?
There are two issues. In the past, as I said 2.5 years ago, when monetary policy rates were quite high, obviously they also affected lending rates. At the same time, since then, the policy rate declined quite significantly by over 500 basis points. So currently, we need to see really a decline in lending rates. However, we don't see it. Well, we have been seeing it, but not as much as we expected. The question why? And the answer is because there are still significant amount of non-performing loans. And before the banks have to address the issue of non-performing loans before they can further reduce their lending rates. So we expect as the monetary policy rate declines gradually to support declining inflation, and as the share of non-performing loans, loans that are not being paid or serviced, also declines, lending rates would go down, but it requires time.
And if the country should come out of it, laws and economic collapse and all that, and graduate from the IMF program, how exactly, or how does the IMF say goodbye to them?
Well, we're very happy when countries graduate from IMF programs. And I would just repeat what I have already said, that our work is to create the conditions, essentially, to help the authorities build the foundations for graduating from IMF programs. And that's why we have here, for example, in Ghana, Africa Quest 2, which is technical assistance center, which provides technical assistance to West African countries. At the same time, we provide our technical assistance from headquarters, and also we provide training so that the authorities get experience and get used to conducting good economic policies. Obviously, there are some political economy issues, but it is essentially the focus should be on the economy to make sure that economic growth sustained and it is high, that the country can achieve high economic growth in a sustainable manner.
Bring me up to speed what exactly is like the relationship between the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and that of Ghana.
Sorry?
Give me an update on what the relationship is like between Ghana and the IMF.
We have, Ghana has an IMF-supported program. And I emphasize the word supported because this is important. This is a 3-year extended credit facility in the amount exceeding $900 million. The program was approved in April 2015, at the time when Ghana's economy experienced significant difficulties. It had significant imbalances. And during this period of time, during the last almost 2.5 years, Ghana has been going through the macroeconomic adjustment. So what am I talking about? First and foremost, it's fiscal consolidation. And if you look back at 2013-2014, fiscal deficit, the difference between revenue and expenditure was double digits in terms of GDP. It was over 10% of GDP. Now, last year, you remember that it was 6% of GDP. So this is a significant progress in balancing fiscal accounts. So the governments need to finance through borrowing is much less than it used to be.
But are we doing that? Have you seen that? Is Ghana borrowing less, or we keep hiking and increasing our borrowing rate?
Yes, Ghana has been borrowing less, and you can see it in the debt to GDP ratio. It was rising until, I believe, 2016, and in 2017 it was the first year when it slightly declined from 73%, if I remember correctly, in 2013 to 71% in 2017. Yes, as the difference between expenditure and revenue shrinks and the financing requirement declines, obviously the borrowing, the need to borrow also declines. At the same time, what is also important, it's not only the amount how much a country is going to borrow,
right,
but also at what cost. And at the time when Ghana experienced significant imbalances, and what I'm talking about is the fiscal deficit, which was in double digits, the cost of borrowing was very expensive. It was also in double digits, if you remember the issuance of the Eurobond back in 2015, for example. Since then, the cost of borrowing has declined, and we see that investors have much greater confidence in the policies implemented by the government, and this is a very positive shift. It has to continue over time to make sure that Ghana's debt to GDP ratio further declines and Ghana exits this group of countries which is classified as at high risk of debt distress. It will require some time. And the government has this objective, and we believe that it has the capacity to achieve that.
All right, but if I may ask, how long have you been in Ghana?
Sorry.
How long have you been in Ghana?
I have been in Ghana for almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years. I should believe you experienced a bit of the outgoing government, which is the NDC government.
Well, I came here in October 2015.
Okay.
So essentially it was the beginning of our program, and I have been working here throughout the program up to date. Yeah.
All right. So if I may ask, what do you think the previous government wasn't doing right or did right as to compare to what exactly is being done by this NPP government at the moment? Well,
I would say that those imbalances that were accumulated in 2013, 2014 were accumulated over some period of time. And I cannot really put a number of years during which they were accumulated. What was important was really that the government used to borrow from the Central Bank of Ghana. So essentially, that's how the government partly financed its deficit, the difference between the revenue and expenditure. So, and as it went by, and as this borrowing rose, it had implications for the rest of the economy. And the implications were high inflation, right, exchange rate depreciation, and also the high cost of borrowing and the markets, which was difficult to access. So I would say that that's the reason why I won't get tired to emphasize the importance of consistent, good macroeconomic policies. Because I have been hearing time and time again about the austerity of the IMF program. Yes, I agree with everyone who says that the IMF program, the IMF-supported program, has been difficult.
You agree with that?
I agree. It has been difficult. It's difficult to implement, and as I said already, it is a very unpleasant medicine that you need to take to get back to the economic stability.
Now you are coming from the IMF, and you are saying it is a very unpleasant medicine to take to heal yourself and all that. What makes you say that as a rep from the IMF?
Well, the measures that were agreed under the program were not easy. Essentially, if you look at fiscal consolidation, we are talking about containing expenditure. And Ghana, we all know that Ghana has many needs, many development needs, infrastructure needs.
Right.
It needs to invest in education. It needs to invest in health. And when you are limited in your resources, you have to choose very, very carefully so that you don't really overspend and you don't add to your debt. So that's why it is so difficult, because you have to constrain. Look at yourself. I mean, if your salary, sorry, that's not the right example. If you don't earn as much as you would like to spend, you feel the pain. I do.
Now, I want to ask this as well. You see the debate between Ghana and IMF as a bitter pain to take to cure the illness of economic decline. Now, if I may ask, do you think there was an alternative for Ghana to have gone for, either than coming to the IMF for this bitter pain?
Well, let me ask you this question. What do you think about it? And let me tell you where Ghana was coming from. Essentially, at the time when I came here, and it was October 2015, Ghana was losing its foreign exchange reserves. And foreign exchange reserves are essentially the reserves of the central bank that should be used to maintain temporary fluctuations of the exchange rate. Its fiscal deficit was over 10% in 2014.
Right.
So, and Ghana had issues financing its expenditure through borrowing, external borrowing and domestic borrowing. Just let me remind you that domestic debt rates were over 20% back in 2015-2016. And for the most part, Ghana's debt was short-term debt. It was in T-bills. So what does it mean? If creditors turn back on a country, the country could be in a very difficult position, right? Now the situation has changed. So was it necessary? I would say yes, those measures were necessary, and they had to be implemented quickly. And this is the reason why investors have a much greater confidence now in the economy of Ghana than back in 2013-2014.
And another thing I've been wanting to ask is, if this program should end, would you advise that an extension is to be made, looking at what you were telling me as an hour?
The program will end, definitely, and I will be very happy once Ghana graduates from the IMF-supported program, and I really wish the government, the authorities, to be able to sustain those achievements that have been made over the last few years, and to continue implementing disciplined policies. And I also hope that Ghana will grow to its prosperity and the wealth of this country will increase. It definitely deserves it.
Now there's been several policies coming from the MPP government, one district, one factory, free education, here and there. Now from you, the IMF, which is your favorite, or would you think is good for the country's economy?
Well, I think that all these policies are important, and they come from the government, and the government definitely knows best what are the areas that need to be developed. I personally like the program on free senior high school education, and the reason why I think it is a very important program is because you have very young population who needs to be very well equipped to join the global labor force. And this is one way to go. At the same time, these policies have to be implemented in a sustainable manner. It means that the free SHS has to be implemented not only this year or the next year, it has to be implemented for the generations to come. And this is the reason why fiscal discipline is so important. It is important to generate sufficient revenue for the government to be able to finance all those development policies.
Now, if I may ask another thing, tell me, you give me your view about what you make of the free SHS policy and how best it can help the country. Now, I know you've heard news and read tabs and heard about how government is trying to bring on a new policy to support what is being implemented as of now, considering the free SHS policy, the double track system and all that. Now, they still need money to implement this. Do you think the MPP government can survive without IMF to implement their policy, their numerous policies?
Yes, the government definitely can survive and will survive without the IMF-supported program, and I very much look forward to this time. The government has...
very much look forward to that this time.
Look forward for the time when Ghana becomes, gets on its 2 feet and the government implements good economic policies without any involvement from the outside. So I think this is important, and this is what the President has been talking when he mentions Ghana beyond aid. Ghana has to be, and it can be, it has all the conditions to stand on its 2 feet. Yes, I believe that the government can implement its policies, its development policies in a sustainable manner. And the government has already announced, and it was in the mid-year budget review, the program of domestic revenue mobilization. It has announced several measures which need to be implemented.
All right, I'm still here with IMF representative in Ghana, Ms. Natalia. We are back after the break with more. Don't go away.
Towards the continent's development agenda are told. With a lively setting, participants touch on the role of culture and creativity in national development, exploration, education, and matters confronting Africa and Africans. Head over to Saniba at Jamestown Cafe to be part of the discussion.
Ghana is engulfed in filth everywhere you look. People day in, day out are filling our gutters with filth and openly defecating in our gutters and on our seashores. 1 out of every 5 Ghanaians defecates in the open, and about 90% of all our excreta ends up in streams and rivers, the same place our drinking water comes from. These acts have contributed to making Ghana one of the unsanitary places in Africa, whilst contributing to the rise in diseases such as cholera and malaria. For instance, 3.5 million people contract malaria every year, with approximately 20,000 children dying from malaria every year, which is 25% of the deaths of children under the age of 5. A report released by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, indicates that Ghana loses in excess of over $290 million yearly to poor sanitation. According to the report, these monies are being spent on clearing huge refuse within cities and healthcare as a result of the country's sanitation problems. Every year, Parts of the nation is flooded during the rainy season, leading to loss of lives and properties, an act which is primarily due to our gutters being choked with filth. For how long are we going to watch as our nation is engulfed in filth? For how long are we going to watch our loved ones die of preventable diseases like cholera and malaria? Whose responsibility is it to ensure that waste is properly managed in Ghana? Is the nation considering other alternative means of waste disposal, such as recycling, which can help protect our environment as well as serve as an avenue for money? What are we as citizens doing to ensure that our environment is clean and remains so? Are we not ashamed as a people that our lovely beaches that could have served as tourist attractions have turned into landfills and toilets? Ghana would only become the cleanest nation in Africa if only we, its citizens, are disciplined and come together to fight against this menace. Amaning Television is waging a war against filth. What about you? Stop the filth now.
Abarkazanta yanzu.
Fomo mu gye wo amno ne no.
Jijogbedu dokoko yakachio. Moma yenyai efin aye yegu montene so sesia.
And so I'm still here with Ms. Natalia Koliadina, IMF representative here in Ghana. We will come back. Now, very quick, when we were going for the break, you were telling me about how infrastructure here in Ghana is coming off and all that. Now, if I may ask, do you think there is any investor here in the country which can support Ghana's economy, other than we always going out for external support?
Well, I believe that if business conditions are good, and what I mean by that, for example, registering businesses, it should be easy and quick. It shouldn't really take days. It should probably take hours. Clearing goods through the customs, easy paying taxes. For example, let me give you an example. I think it's in Estonia, where it takes 5 minutes to file taxes. Then definitely the costs of doing business in Ghana would decline, and definitely many businesses and many businessmen would be interested in investing in Ghana. I'm sure that local businesses will be interested.
Now, as a country that we keep borrowing, definitely keep borrowing and will keep borrowing, if I should say, do you think it's sad on our part as a country to always be going out for support from the international fund?
Well, I have already mentioned that the need for borrowing has been declining, and we expect it to decline over the medium term, so that the debt to GDP, government debt to GDP ratio would continue declining. So I don't really think that you need to, you are not dependent on borrowing. Obviously, borrowing is important for development needs. At the same time, to borrow and to get the result, you need to focus, you need to prioritize spending. And it is not only about the government, it is also how private sector makes its decisions. It is not going to borrow unless it will be able to repay.
Now, we're making reference to countries which have come out of debt crisis. What one thing do you think Ghana can learn from any of these countries to be stronger, even after the program, and still not go back for any other international support again?
Well, Ghana's debt, as I have already mentioned, in 2016 was over 76%. And Ghana was and still in the category of countries at high risk of debt distress. So this is why fiscal discipline is very important. What I mean by fiscal discipline is reducing the fiscal deficit. The difference between revenue and expenditures needs to be reduced. Given the need for significant expenditures for infrastructure and development needs, it is paramount to raise revenue. So that is why domestic revenue mobilization program and its implementation are very important.
All right. I'll be here with Ms. Natalia Koliadina, IMF resident representative here in Ghana. My name is Bryce Nana Kwesi. Amaning, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I should rather be saying thanks for giving us time in your office.
Thank you very much.
And so, thanks for watching. My name is Bryce Nana Kwesi Amaning, and this has been On One with Amaning.